Hi, I'm Marc Ronick. I am the founder and CEO of Ironic Media, and where we produce podcasts, consult podcasters, help them launch, help them grow. And I understand I'm supposed to give my best or worst advice that I've received. And really, I'm going to share the worst, and it isn't from one specific person. It's more in general. Basically, anybody who gives me advice on something that I want to learn, something new, a technique, a tip, anybody who tells me that I must follow a formula to a T, step by step, and if I don't, they tell me it won't work. That to me is a giant red flag. And I used to take a lot of that kind of advice, and I used to feel like I had to follow specific formulas to make something happen, to be successful in that thing. And it literally almost drove me crazy. And so now I try to approach things where I will take the advice. I will, how do I want to say this? I will absorb the information, and then I will cater it to what feels right to me. And if it doesn't work the first time, I'm okay with that. I'm going to learn something from it, and then I'm going to move forward and improve upon what I've started. So that would be probably the worst advice that I would say to anybody. Make sure that you trust the person, and make sure that you don't follow it to a T if it doesn't feel right to you. That's what I got for you, Phil.
I like that. Because we hear a lot about trusting the process and working the process, but you're talking the step by step by step with no flexibility at all there. And I would agree. I think that's really tough. We have to be able to inject our personality at least a little bit into this. I like to think of templates and scripts really as outlines more than I do as step by step things. But you said that almost drove you crazy, Marc. Do you mind sharing a little more about that?
Well,
what
sure.
happened,
I think what could probably be relatable to some of your audience is when it comes to social media and creating content and following these formulas that people tell you are the ways to grow, go viral, etc. They'll tell you some people will tell you post 3 times a day, and it has to look a certain way, and you have to cut it every 2 to 3 seconds, and you have to keep it to 60 seconds or less, and all these rules that at the time, because I felt new to the platforms I was using, I felt like, okay, well, if these people are telling me and I see they've had success, I have to follow it that way. And it was driving me crazy because I didn't want to post every single day. I didn't want to post multiple times a day. And I didn't want to do all this heavy editing all the time. And so I would sometimes, by the end of a day, end of the week, I would be tearing my hair out and just, whoever would listen to me would just bitch and moan about it. And until I finally decided, you know what, I've learned enough from all of these pieces of advice, and now I'm just going to do it my way. And it seems to be working for me pretty well overall.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Take what works and use that, and discard what doesn't, and figure out your best way. I like that a lot. So podcasting is interesting to me. I've been doing it a long time. I'm sure you have too. When did you get started in podcasting, and what was it like back then?
I got started over 16 years ago. Not a lot of people can say that. I know a few people that can. And I got into it because I have a love and passion for fantasy football.
Cool. Me too.
Good. And in college is where I had initially been introduced to it and addicted ever since. And at the time, podcasting was very new, and I found a few different fantasy football podcasts that I would listen to get some advice from. And I also recognized that there weren't enough. I felt like I could do it just as well as some of these other people because I had a lot of success doing it. So I figured I love talk radio at the time. Talk radio is a big passion of mine. And I figured, why not give it a whirl? So I grabbed some people from some forums and message boards that I was also a part of talking fantasy football, grabbed a couple people, actually one guy, and I grabbed a sports radio guy from the area I lived in, and we started podcasting about fantasy football. So as far as like what was everything like back then, people today even still will tell you that it's hard to explain to people what podcasts are. In other words, people will look at you sometimes like, a podcast? What's that? Right? Once the pandemic came, that actually got more people exposed and now have an understanding. But back then, when I would say I podcast, people would just look at me head cocked and what is that? Right? And the only way at the time I could explain it was like on demand radio. And that was enough. That would be enough for people to get it. And yeah, so it's come a long way since 16 plus years ago.
Wow. So is that fantasy football podcast still live, or did you give that up?
No, it's not still alive. I looked, and I looked for it. I used to do it on a platform called Blog Talk Radio.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yep, and they're actually still around. And actually, they hired me several years into my podcasting journey as a contractor, and I put together, which was really the first ever live streaming 24/7 fantasy sports talk, and basically all sorts of fantasy sports. And I managed it. I found the talent for it. We had 8 hours consistently live streaming talk radio, and then in the off hours we would replay shows from that day and from that week. So yeah, Blog Talk Radio, I guess at some point pulled the RSS feed off, and it wasn't there anymore. And I just reached out recently to my old co-host who says he just found some old episodes of ours. So I'm looking forward to going through that and hearing how awful I was back then.
That's fantastic. So
yeah.
That's what, 2007, 2008,
something like that.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
I started podcasting a little before that, back when you had to pick up the telephone and used Hipcast and conference calls unlimited, Zane Safran's company, to call in, where you had to connect, and a lot of times you had an echo because it didn't connect right.
Oh yeah,
right? It wasn't full duplex. So
well, not to mention also the internet connections weren't nearly as fast as they were. Well, you were using a phone, but I'm thinking of Skype. That was the one that I always used.
That's right. Yeah, with Pamela.
Yeah, and it drove me nuts. It was really, it just was not the way it is today. Doing something like this never would have happened back then.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So very cool. Well, I didn't know all that history. So that's fun to hear. We'll talk about that separately, but I think as we bring that forward now, interestingly enough, podcasts are still 40% only people, 50% have recognition. I mean, what's the number that you've heard with that, Mark?
Man, that number, I hear it differently from all sorts of different resources, but yeah, it's definitely, I believe now it's somewhere over 60% of Americans have listened to a podcast at least once over the course of a month. Something like that. So it might even be a little higher now, but yeah, it's somewhere around there. So it's definitely growing in popularity and awareness.
Do you think it's because of the term podcast, or why do you think that more people aren't aware? Because, I've read all of Edison Research's stuff. Tom Webster's a friend of mine. Like I see what Webby's talking about and all of that, but I'm curious, why do you think that is, that more people aren't listening?
Well, I mean, I think it's just a matter of awareness. It's a matter, people are used to the more traditional mediums and some of the newer ones like social media, but ultimately it's just a matter of getting out there. And I think that that's happening now. So I think that your question is valid, and I think it would be even more valid even say 3 or 4 years ago, because again, the pandemic really exposed people to it and exposed people to the idea of becoming podcasters. I mean, it's funny. I started my business just before the pandemic and literally launched my first 2 or 3 clients in March when it all went down. And at the time, there was certainly nerves. I was certainly a little concerned about starting a business right at the beginning of a pandemic. And it turned out to be great for me because so many people were home looking for things to do, and podcasting kept coming up for people, and I kept coming across those people. So it ended up being great for business for me. And yeah, I think that it's a big reason why more and more people now are starting to know what it is and connect with it more.
Cool. Well, you mentioned getting it out there and social media, and that's interesting, right? With the changes that are happening on Twitter, with the fact that that's becoming less stable. Algorithms don't really reward external links at all. So how I guess getting started could be something we talk about, but I'd rather talk about promotion because I think that's harder. So how do we get out there more, Mark, so people can see us more and consume more of our good stuff?
Lots of, lots of different ways. I think that one of the best ways is, if you're already a podcaster or planning to be one, get on other podcasts and start talking about what you do, because you are in front of a captured audience that understand what podcasting is and what it means, and already likely avid listeners. So get in front of other audiences. That is probably the best and most affordable way of promoting a podcast. And I don't see enough podcasters doing that. I see the ones that get it, they are doing it constantly. And the ones that don't usually connect with that as an idea. And it's so effective. So that's definitely one area I would go. And then as far as social media goes, you just touched on it, with the algorithms constantly changing. It can be really challenging because just when you think you figured it out, they change it. And that's not by accident. I really believe that the algorithms continue to change. Sure, it's probably partially for the platform itself, but I really believe that they're doing that because they know people figure it out, and they want people to have to go back and relearn and figure it out again. Keeps them on the platform, right? So I get it that it's challenging. I have that challenge myself, and it's a matter of just continuing on. I just posted recently a reel about keep going, and that's really the name of the game. I don't care if people are posting, as I said earlier, every single day or multiple times a day. I do care that they have a strategy, and if that strategy is once, twice a week, fine, that's great, and be consistent with that. And over time that will pay off. And so I will always encourage people to take advantage of something like social media as well. And I'll give you one more, and it is good old traditional pay for your advertising, pay to play, right? Things like Facebook ads, even TikTok and Instagram, boosting those posts. There seems to be this stigma among some people that they believe you should not pay for your content to be more seen on social media platforms. And there's speculation about why you shouldn't. But ultimately, to me, if it helps you grow, if it helps you get the exposure and the brand recognition that you're looking for, it seems a little silly to me why you wouldn't do that, or at least experiment with it and see what it does for you. So those are at least three, and I could probably take up your entire show here with multiple ways. So I'll leave you with three for now.
No, those are helpful. And I really resonate with your last one. And that's one that I'm committed to doing more of this year, is advertising. Because I haven't done a lot of advertising, but people, frankly, they don't find things. They're not looking for us. They get served up based on their interests. They look at what they're interested in, and then we target them, and now we put it in front of them. We kind of interrupt their normal scroll with, oh, well, maybe this is interesting. And I also like that you didn't say promote everything.
Right.
Because that is terrible advice, right? Promoting everything, because not everything is great. Not everything is worth promoting. Sometimes it's practice, and I think that's okay too.
I want to say you just hit on something that it would be unfair if I didn't mention this as well. You mentioned how they're not necessarily just looking for us, right? We instead, we want to really know who our audience is and what are their challenges, what are the things that entertain them, that they enjoy, and we want to play to that, right? We want to play to the idea. If, for example, my target audience are podcasters and content creators, I want to make sure that I'm spending time really getting to know who they are, what their struggles are, and then address those struggles with potential solutions to those struggles on my podcast, because they're going to be searching for the struggle when they go to Google, or if they use Bing or ChatGPT, whatever. They're going to start searching for the struggle, and my content, in order for them to find me, needs to be addressing those things with the same types of keywords that they're using, and that's the formula to also grow your podcast.
Definitely searching for the struggle. I think that's a good reminder to us, instead of just providing the solution, which the name of the solution might be super unique, but nobody's looking for that yet. They're searching for the struggle. I think that's really good, man. Really good advice. So with that, one of the reasons why I really enjoy your content is you're always experimenting and trying some different things. And most recently, a lot around ChatGPT and how that works. So you've got a great free ChatGPT cheat sheet for podcasters. I'll put a link up in a little bit to all of that. But let's talk about that, Mark. How is ChatGPT, is there a threat of it replacing content providers of podcasters? What do you think?
I mean, I think that you could definitely make an argument that it could be a threat. And I look at it as a tool. It's a way to assist you with your process, no matter what, whether you're a podcaster, an entrepreneur, a lawyer, a real estate agent. It's a tool to assist you in your process. And I love using it for brainstorming and creating and coming up with new ideas. Having this artificial intelligence at my disposal and being able to have pretty much a conversation with it. I talk a lot to podcasters about the power of collaboration. And so when I don't have that person, that real life person in front of me to collaborate with, having that really works well for me. And it takes me in directions that I don't think I would have gone in if I just sat down with a blank piece of paper and started brain dumping all of my different ideas. So yeah, I think that was probably one of the main initial things that drew me to that kind of platform like ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's another virtual assistant for us. It's imperfect. It's low cost. If you pay $20 a month, fairly low cost. And yet the amount of brainstorming you can get. I mean, I will tell you, if I had to pay someone as smart as ChatGPT to be my partner, it would be very expensive. And not everything they say is perfect, but still super valuable. So I like that you don't see that as a threat. I know
that, to your point about it not being perfect, I know you have a very recent experience of it not being perfect for you.
Yeah. So Mark, of course I had to use one of your prompts, right? That was important. It's important to me to research my guests and spend a little time kind of in their head. So one of your prompts is provide a brief overview of your podcast guest and their expertise or accomplishments and what they're good at. And then suggest 5 interesting and relevant questions to ask them during the interview. Now, to be clear, I'm not going to ask any of those questions, but I am going to say, I put in your name and I put in podcasting. And what made me laugh is it said that you're the founder and CEO of Stitcher, one of the popular podcasting streaming platforms. I'm like, oh, wow, that's great.
What a guest.
I'd done my research before, right? What a guest. Yes. And then I'm like, no, that's the wrong guy. Maybe. Or what do you think, Mark? I mean, why did it tell me that you're the founder of Stitcher?
Well, I think it told you that. Unfortunately for me, I'm probably not as big of a name as the actual founder of Stitcher. And therefore, if ChatGPT doesn't know who I am as of 2021, because that's the most recent data, September of 2021. If it doesn't have any information on me up till that point, it's going to make up the answers for you. And so I've experimented with it, seeing how much it really knows of me, and it doesn't really know much about me. I'm not big enough of a name yet. So yeah, that's why it doesn't work for you. So it's important to understand when you're putting in prompts like this. Sure, that prompt would have worked great for you if you were going to sit down and have an interview with Elon Musk, right? It's going to spit out all sorts of information, but make sure you go and fact check before you just assume that it's giving you all the right information, because in cases like this, it's not going to give it to you. It's just going to make it up and do its best to give you an answer, even if it's completely wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely fact check. Smile a little bit, knowing it's imperfect, and then still do your own work. So with that, what other AI are you using for podcasting, Mark? What else are you finding that's super helpful for you?
Great question. I actually have created a community and mastermind group around all of these different tools that podcasters can be using for AI. I find a lot of content out there for the non-podcaster. So with a friend of mine and a colleague of mine, Nick Nallback, we created something called nextgenpodcaster.com. And so what we're doing is Nick and I are experimenting with all sorts of different AI tools that are out there, and then sharing what we're learning with this community. And they're sharing with us what they're learning, and with each other what they're learning. So it's been really exciting. ChatGPT is definitely a big one. Bing, which Microsoft's Bing, that is ChatGPT, and it is connected to the internet, which makes it in some ways a little more knowledgeable than the original version of ChatGPT. So having that tool at your disposal is really powerful. And I tend to go there when I'm going to be talking with, using your example, when I'm going to be talking with somebody that may not know on ChatGPT, it'll figure out more using Bing. So that's definitely one area. And I'm enjoying learning more about some of these graphic designing tools that are out there, these AI designing tools. Midjourney is a big one. It's very popular right now, and it's not quite ready for podcasters yet. And there are some other tools that are out there that are more ready for it. And by ready, I mean the one of the probably biggest ways a podcaster would use a graphic design program like that is to create logos for their podcast, create a design specific to an episode, kind of like an album cover, but for an episode, right? People will use it for that. And that's why something like Canva has stepped it up, and they've added AI technology to it. So now you can literally, much like ChatGPT, you can talk with it more conversationally, and you can tell it what you want to create, and it will spit something out for you. And then you have that flexibility to edit it and change it around to exactly what you want it to look like if it didn't get it right the first time. So that's definitely another tool. And then another fun tool that I'm using that actually I think can be helpful for a podcaster, it's a tool called 11 Labs. And that is it's an AI voice synthesizer. I guess that's the best way to explain it, where it will learn someone's voice based off of very little bit of a recording. You could give it up to a minute. I like to give it several recordings so that it really can learn and understand my voice. But what it's done is I've created an AI voice version of myself. And if I did a recording and got something wrong, right? Like I said something wrong, and I don't feel like going through the motions of setting up all my equipment, hitting record, redoing it. If it's a few words or a sentence or two, I could go into 11 Labs and literally type what I wanted to say, and it will spit it out in my voice where the average ear is not going to know the difference. I think I know the difference. I could probably tell because it's my own voice, but for the most part, people don't notice. So that's been a very handy tool. And the scary thing about that one is theoretically, Phil, I could go and get a bunch of your podcast recordings, go in there and create your voice and have it say something like, Marc Ronick's the best guest I've ever had. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that might not be true all the time, or it might be perfectly true, right? I mean, that's the interesting thing about that. So that's wild, man. So cool. 11 Labs, Midjourney, and Canva.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So Mark, I'm curious. Have you seen what Arnold Schwarzenegger is doing with his newsletter? Did you see his shift with AI? So he moved from a text-only newsletter to now it's a voice only read by the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but not actually by him. Now he clearly
Yeah.
disclaims it, but many people are, and by many people, I guess I've probably read 5 or 10 articles. That's not a lot, but I've read some people that have said that even though he disclaims it, it's almost too good because it sounds just like him and it's almost impossible to find that out. So might that be to your point about typing things in and getting a voice, might that be might that be a threat to podcasting or to people that are people on Cameo that are currently doing things for other people?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big threat for in many ways, not just podcasting and Cameo as an example. I mean, people can really use that for some pretty mischievous stuff, right? I mean, you could theoretically create a voice and call somebody using that voice and, I don't know, get their credit card number or something if they're not smart enough to keep with it, withhold that information. So yeah, it's definitely a threat. And I think we're going to be experiencing a lot of growing pains through this. And I think I wouldn't be surprised at some point if there is an attempt, at least, for some more regulation around how this stuff is being used. And there's already whispers of that now. And, that is an interesting example, that Arnold Schwarzenegger one. And there's another one that's been going around lately at the time that we're doing this recording. This one video that I'm thinking of, it has well over 300,000 views already. It's only been up for about a week. And I think was put up by the Joe Rogan company, the podcast. They basically they created an entire episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, all using AI voices. And it's Joe Rogan's voice. And he also gives a very clear disclaimer at the beginning that this is not really me. And he is interviewing the founder, CEO of OpenAI. Those are the ChatGPT people. And it's an hour-long interview of 2 AI voices talking to each other. And I believe the whole conversation was generated through ChatGPT. So it's a completely artificial Joe Rogan Experience show, and people are fascinated with it.
That is super fascinating, Mark. Wow. I can't imagine what the future is going to bring as it relates to this, because that's so interesting. I mean, it changes so much of the game, right? Now we can have a researcher, we could have a voice, you can have, robot there or a hologram to provide. Wow, that's really interesting. Really interesting. Man, oh man, that's just that's so much to think about and so much to consider. So Mark, as someone who's been there in the past and who's there now, prognosticate. What do you see coming next? What do you see in the next 5 or 10 years of podcasting that maybe some of us haven't considered, even if it's just a wild take? I mean, what do you think?
I think, especially along the lines of what we're talking about with AI, I think that podcasting actually has the potential to be extremely powerful, because so many people are going to be relying on this AI technology, and something like a podcast, whether it's video and or audio only, this is real people having real conversations, right? It's the people that are doing it authentically, not relying solely on AI to make all of the content. Those are the people that are going to really shine. And I think that audiences are going to really start leaning even more so on podcasting, because they're going to get that authenticity that they're looking for. They're going to hear or see from real people talking about real subjects that they're interested in. And so I think that just increases the value of the content. So to me, it's too hard to predict really where anything is going to go, knowing how much AI is going to influence things in the next year, in the next 5 years and beyond. So that's why I have a hard time that's why I hesitate. But I do think what it's going to do is increase the value of the content that independent creators are putting out there.
Wow. Well, I hope you're right. I love that. I think that's great, right? I think that's really cool. So you've got a ton of stuff up on your Linktree. For folks that are unfamiliar with Linktree, it's a great way to put a bunch of links up. That way, for any social platform that does not offer more than one link, you can use that. Mark's is at linktr.ee bit.ly/ironic media. That's IRONICK media. Check that out. He's got lots of great stuff up there. His free chat GPT sheet for podcasters. You can book a 30-minute call with him. You can subscribe to his newsletter. You can check out his next gen podcast community. Lots of great stuff there, Mark. But if folks want to kind of get started on this podcasting journey, we didn't go deep on startup, but let's take us back here. If they want to get started on the journey, what is 1 or 2 or 3 things that you think they should do to get started, maybe even before they record their first episode, so they can make sure that they have a successful podcast, maybe successful to them or maybe successful to them?
Yeah, I think it all first starts with your purpose, your mission. Why do you want to start a podcast, right? To me, I think a lot of people go in with this intention that they're either hoping to make a lot of money. It's the whole rich and famous scenario. And I think that's going to be a challenge for anybody if that's the real reason why. So I would encourage a podcaster to first really understand what you want to do, what do you want to get out of this, and what's your mission? You know, are you, like for me, if I'm going to start a podcast about podcasting, I really want to think about who I'm, back to what I was saying earlier, who my target audience is and how can I serve them. A lot of people who get into podcasting oftentimes, at least initially, make it all about them first. And that's where the struggle begins to grow their podcast. I would challenge anybody who isn't growing the way they had expected with their podcast is to go back, look at your content and see how many times are you saying me, I, or something like that, because to me, that's a red flag. So if you're just starting out, focus on your audience, who your target audience is, create what we call an avatar, your ideal viewer, listener, know everything about them, right? From their age to their occupations, to the level of income, to their interests and hobbies, to their struggles, which is probably the first one I should have said, because really that is a huge attractor. If you can tell your audience that you understand what they're going through and then provide them with solutions to that, whether they're your own solutions, whether it comes from a guest, a combination, that is the power of podcasting. And that's going to be where you have opportunity to grow. More and more people will start sharing it with others that have similar interests or struggles. And that's where the fun begins, right? So know your target audience, know your mission, and have fun. I think that initially it can be fun. And then I think a lot of times people come to the reality that, I got to do this every week. And I'm sure you can appreciate this. Sometimes there are weeks where you look at your computer screen or a piece of paper and you say, what the heck am I going to talk about today? Right. And so you got to make sure that you stop, have fun, and you plan ahead. I like to tell the podcasters I work with when we first get started, when they're talking about different ideas for episodes, I tell them, why don't you go make a list of at least 20 episodes that you could sit down and talk about right now. And the ones that struggle, then we got to spend some time really deciding, is this really the area you want to focus on your podcast? But ultimately, come up with a list of different topics that you want to talk about so that for at least the first, like I said, the first 20 episodes, you've got that covered. And then what I also have them do is record at least 5 of that 20 before they even launch their podcast, because this way it puts you ahead. There is that dopamine rush that you get when your podcast launches, and it's exciting. And especially when you start getting feedback and you see and hear the everything coming together. And sometimes I've seen podcasters kind of stop and want to take all of that in and then stop focusing on the next episode. So to batch your content, record it all, have it all ready to go, and stay ahead at all times will serve you really well. So that's what I got for you.
Wow. Great advice. Something that you said early on, you said again, and I love it. Search for the struggle. and share it, right? Help them with the struggle, provide solutions to their struggle. I think that's so, so helpful, Mark. So much goodness there, so much stuff that we can actually do. Folks, if you're looking for help moving your podcast forward, either getting started or improving, Marc Ronick is a great guy to get to know. I follow him on Instagram. I read his blog. I listen to what he says because he's got lots of great insight. If you want to go to his website instead of Linktree, go to ironicmedia.com. IRONICK media.com. Check him out and get to know
Thank you, Phil.
Mark. Mark, thank you so
Appreciate
much, my
it.
friend. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.